Hello, everyone. Thought today I'd talk about the most critical House of Leaves theory I have after finishing the book. This is a fan theory of my own that I have. I don't know if other folks have this idea, but I'm guessing at least some folks have a similar idea about the big idea of what House of Leaves is about. And so there will be a lot of spoilers in this. It'll be a short video about just the core of the theory, but there'll still be some spoilers that I touch on. So if you haven't read the book and you don't want it spoiled, then please go ahead and read it and then maybe come back and listen to this video and the theory that I have. So for those who have read it and know, House of Leaves is divided into 4 top-level narratives with different speakers who are giving that narrative. And there's a lot of minor narratives as well, but there's really 4 top-level ones. The first one is the Navidson record itself, which is the story of the house. And the house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, which is the core of the story and the selling point of the book. The second narrative and the narrator, the Zampano manuscript, this is by the blind man from LA who dies early on in the book, and he has an academic manuscript about the Navidson record and all the recordings of what happens in the house. And then he has a lot of footnotes and references to those films. The third level is Johnny Truant's narrative, and this takes place mostly in footnotes, or all in footnotes, I believe, to the Zampano manuscript. So it's several nested layers here, with the Navidson record being the core, Zampano's manuscript being above it, and then Johnny Truant's comments and footnotes about the Zampano above that. And then the final are the editors themselves who comment on Johnny Truant's footnotes at times and kind of correct and point us in the right direction. But despite those 4 main narratives and narrators, and some minor ones as well, there's the topic, and where my theory, really a fan theory, comes from, are 2 short parts at the end of the book. And these come at the narrative level of Johnny's description of the story. So first there's what I would call the end of Johnny's story. So Johnny, at the end of his narration, ends up in Flagstaff, Arizona, as a hobo getting off of a train in Flagstaff. He has an interesting interaction with a bar band that's playing a song that has to do with the House of Leaves, the house and the Zampano and Navidson record. And so he talks to the band about it. After this, he goes and lies on a bench outside, and what's interesting is that he then wakes up with a mysterious dog, specifically a husky, next to him, and it's near dawn on the next day, and there's narration about how he's going to stay in Flagstaff and stay there for a while. Some description of the dog running around and what the dawn looks like. And then he's thinking of his mother, and his narration of what his mother would say, his mother saying that everything will be okay and everything will be all right. And then there's the other short part near the end of the book. Again, this is coming from Johnny, still at his level of the narration, and still from his voice. There's something significant about it, is that when he begins the story, he says that it came from one of the doctors that he had stayed with in Seattle. And if you remember that part, he does go over that he has a whole story about how he stayed with some Seattle doctors and he felt really great by the end of it. And then he says later that if we believe that, we'd have to be essentially really stupid to believe it, because how would someone like Johnny have a friend who's a doctor, much less two friends who are a doctor? And so there's no Seattle doctor friends that he has, and yet he says this story comes from them. And the story is about a mother giving birth to a critically ill baby. And what's interesting is that it's very detailed in the description of the treatment and the and all the equipment that they use and the process they use about keeping the baby alive, from what I recall. But mixed in with these realistic details, super realistic, and that's what stood out to me, is that they were very detailed about the baby and the mother, but there's this supernatural story that's mixed in where the baby is born critically ill, it's going to die, but the mother is staying with the baby and singing to it and whispering, and this goes on for days. I believe 3 days that the mother keeps talking and singing to the baby without taking any rest herself. She's up for these 3 days straight, if I remember right. And the doctors can't figure it out. They're kind of astonished at this whole thing. And then at the end, what happens is that the mother talks to one of the doctors that it's ready. She believes the baby's ready to be taken off life support. And what she does is she goes over to the baby and tells the baby that everything's going to be okay, everything will be all right. And the baby passes away at that point. So these two stories come fairly close together at the end of the whole House of Leaves book. And what obviously stands out is that the words given by the mother are identical between the two. So here's how I'll sum up my fan theory about this all. The first part is that I believe that the part that's given by, supposedly narrated by Johnny in Flagstaff after he's slept on the night on the bench, is that this is actually a description of him after he's passed away. The dog is another somewhat supernatural element. It may not seem like it at first, but a husky especially, just wandering around and walking up to someone and calmly staying with the person in a park randomly is very odd. And his peacefulness, Johnny's peacefulness after all the things that he's gone through in the book, it's a very oddly peaceful narration compared to everything else that's happened. And then, of course, the main thing is his thoughts of what he can imagine his mother saying, that everything's going to be all right and okay. And then that mirroring what happens in the story of the baby and the mother, where the baby is born critically ill, and the mother stays with the baby for 3 days, continually kind of talking and singing to the baby. So this brings up the point of, if Johnny has passed away, which I picture has happened, then who's narrating that part? It's still at the level of Johnny's narration when you go by the font in the book and who's been telling it up to that moment. It's not possible for Johnny, obviously, to tell his story of his own passing away. And he's also told that story of the mother and the baby. And so I think what we have is that the mother and the baby story is actually the core and what I would feel is the true story that exists in the whole House of Leaves. There's layers of somewhat unbelievable and uncanniness to the rest of the book in those narrative levels that are fairly hard to believe and and something that you wouldn't normally buy as something that would really happen. The house itself, obviously, the notes that Zampano adds to his manuscript are also completely ludicrous and not real. And the fact that really the world as a whole focuses more on the artistic and academic thoughts about the house than the actual fact that it's broken all laws of space and time versus what we know about those. And it's just, that part is all incredible. And so it can be either that Johnny's real and the editors are real, or something else is. And so my current theory is that the baby and the mother at the end are real. The story and that's going between them is essentially the whole book, and that's what comes out of it is the baby does pass away at the end, and the product of all of that is the book itself. And so that's what I feel is the core of it all. It's a fascinating book, something that I'll be going back to and looking at again. And so I'd like to have a few more videos and post them up about how this theory plays in with details that happen in the story. So please keep an eye out for those and watch those if you're interested. And I'll also be commenting on other stories that I'm reading currently and theories and ideas around those as well. So until next time, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.